Now, we move to the welcome addresses, and you get to see more of me, of course. But first, I would like to make some introductory remarks about our first speaker in the welcome addresses session, Mr. Dimitrios Αβραμόπουλος. I could speak for hours about his talent and his vision. And I know he's very humble to hear that. But due to the time limit, I will just refer to the most basics. Mr. Αβραμόπουλος has had a fantastic career, taking major political positions. Mayor of Athens, extremely successful. An extremely successful MP, Minister of Health, Tourism, Foreign Affairs and Defense in Greece. And later he became EU Commissioner for Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship between 2014 and 2019 in the Juncker Commission. He held that portfolio at the peak of the migration crisis in Europe and handled it very successfully. Since 2023, he's an MP again with the Party of New Democracy. Mr. Αβραμόπουλος is one of the most prominent politicians we have in Greece and Europe, and a very close friend of the CFIR. We are very grateful for that, and I would like to warmly welcome him, Mr. Dimitrios Αβραμόπουλος, and invite him to take the floor.
Thank you, Konstantina, for your welcome words. Let me tell you that it is much easier to cross the Hormuz Straits than to cross the center of Athens today. It took me more than 2 hours to come from Kifisia here, so I'd like to express regret for that, because I was delayed for 15 minutes, and this is not something I'm using to do. But before I start, I would like to tell you that I have accepted this invitation, which is very timely and topical, and it has to do with one of the most crucial and difficult issues across the world. During my tenure as European Commissioner, I was not responsible only for migration, but also for counter-terrorism, and among all these security issues, one of our priorities was maritime and aviation security. So I'm quite familiar with this big problem. On the other hand, I would like to tell you that I was the chief negotiator on behalf of the European Union in our discussions with the United States on security issues. A huge experience, I can tell you, on what I had led during these days. Unfortunately, all these issues have not been resolved, and it will take time and a high level of responsibility of everybody in Europe, in the United States, and in the world, because actually we are addressing an issue that it is global. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, friends, and stewards of the maritime domain, it is with measured, believe me, reflection and strategic conviction that I welcome you, especially our foreign friends, to Athens, birthplace of seafaring democracy, maritime jurisprudence, and in many ways the original dialogue between land and sea. We gather here not in the celebration of the past, but in acknowledgement of a new present, one in which the maritime domain has once again assumed its historical place as a decisive factor in global power and order. To speak of maritime security today is not to discuss merely the safety of sea lanes or the resilience of ports. It is to engage in a larger inquiry into the durability of rules, the limits of power, and the architectural stability in a rapidly transforming world. For the sea, as Thucydides, a beloved historical personality that Thanasis adores, together with Themistocles, is a domain that unites and divides, protects and exposes. And as history has shown time and again, it is often the first mirror of geopolitical change. In classical strategy, land was the arena of permanence, the sea of possibility. Great powers turned to the sea not only to project influence, but to shape the conditions under which others could act. From Athens' Delian League to Britain's Pax Maritima, the central lesson has endured. Maritime primary is not the exercise of control. It is the orchestration of access. For much of the post-Cold War era, it was presumed that the maritime domain had been definitely pacified. That was the perception. That the sea was now a shared utility rather than a contested space. This illusion has receded. In its place has emerged a renewed contest over influence, legitimacy, and access. We are witnessing the re-geopoliticization of the sea, no longer a neutral medium of commerce. It has once more become a strategic fulcrum where lines of supply and lines of confrontations intersect. The question before us is whether the sea will remain governed by law and custom, or whether it will drift into zones of ambiguity where might supersedes right and where revisionism is disguised as navigation. Greece does not approach these questions from abstraction. Our relationship, it was said before, with the sea is not recent. It is not economic alone. It is civilizational. For millennia, as you know, the Greek word has drawn its strength not from the borders, but from the movement. We are a nation of sailors, of merchants, of philosophers who understood that identity is not weakened by openness. It is forged by it. Today, our merchant fleet is the largest in the world by tonnage, carrying energy, grain, and commerce to every continent. But this is not merely an economic fact. It is a geopolitical asset. And this is something that Greece has to realize. Greek shipping ensures continuity through crisis, reliability in uncertainty, and connectivity across strategic divides. And geography has granted us a unique burden. Situated at the crossroads of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and key maritime routes to the Middle East and Northern Africa, Greece is not only a frontier of Europe, as some used to say. It is a hinge of three continents, a sentinel at the maritime crossroads of conflict and commerce. But the strategic equilibrium we once took for granted is under duress. The normative framework that has governed maritime affairs since the late 20th century, foremost among them the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, is being challenged both directly and obliquely. Unilateral interpretations of maritime zones, the instrumentalization of exclusive economic rights, and the militarization of disputed waters all represent not anomalies, but symptoms of a deeper shift. A contest between legal order and strategic revisionism. Greece has responded with patience and principle. We seek no escalation, no dominance. But neither shall we permit ambiguity to replace clarity where sovereignty and legality are concerned. As history has taught us, a blurred line at sea is a first breach in the wall of peace. The world is redrawing its arteries. Global supply chains, once governed by efficiency, are now shaped by resilience. In this context, trans-regional corridors are no longer logistical abstractions. They are political acts. The proposed India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the so-called IMEC, linking the Indian subcontinent to Europe via the Gulf and the Eastern Mediterranean, represents more than infrastructure. It is a new expression of geopolitical logic to bypass volatility, embed connectivity in trust, and create alternative to monopolized influence. My country, Greece, stands at the terminus of this corridor, not as a bystander, but as an anchor. Our ports, our networks, and our maritime capacity position us not simply as a gateway, but as a stabilizing force where commerce meets governance and opportunity meets sovereignty. But let us be clear, infrastructure without governance is exposure. Strategic corridors are not only about what flows through them, but what shapes their terms. Nowhere is this more evident that in the maritime periphery of the Middle East, from the Straits of Hormuz to the Bab el-Mandeb, from the Red Sea to the Eastern Mediterranean, we see an arc of instability where non-state actors deploy state-scale disruption. Attacks on shipping are no longer piracy. They are political signaling. Disruption has become a weapon of negotiation. The international community must resist the normalization of volatility. Silence in the face of asymmetric disruption invites not equilibrium, but entropy. Maritime security must be restored as a global public good, underwritten not only by power, but as I said before, by principles. In this evolving context, the role of the United States remains pivotal. Even as Washington reorients towards the Indo-Pacific, it retains irreplaceable maritime equities in the Mediterranean and its adjoining seas. The reassessment of naval presence, the strategic expansion of United States port access in Greece, and heightened engagements in the Red Sea all signal a recognition that order is indivisible. That what is lost in one theater cannot be contained in another. Yet, presence must become strategy. Strategic ambiguity must give way to strategic clarity. In the maritime domain, deterrence does not arise from rhetoric, but from demonstrated resolve. Within this recalibration, the partnership between Greece and the United States has deepened quietly consistently, and meaningfully. What it began as a naval cooperation has matured into a strategic alignment rooted not in proximity, but in principles. From the naval bastion of Suda Bay to the logistical gateway of Alexandroupolis, Greece has become a central pillar in the United States maritime posture across the region. But this is not merely infrastructure. It is trust translated into capability. Both nations view maritime freedom not as a tactic, but as a tenet. And together, we have demonstrated that reliability, when embedded in geography, can become a stabilizing force for wider regional order. And this collaboration must continue and become even deeper. Not episodically, but structurally. Europe, for its part, must escape the illusion that geography is a shield. The maritime threats facing the continent are not theoretical. They are imminent, multifaceted, and transnational. From cyber attacks on port infrastructure, it was mentioned before, to the vulnerability of undersea cables, and from the militarization of Arctic routes to the hybrid destabilization of Aegean waters. Europe must develop not only capacities, but a doctrine. And we're very far away from that and from what I know what's happening right now in Brussels. In this, NATO remains indispensable. But NATO also must evolve. It has nothing to do with what it was 20 years ago. It has to adapt to the reality of today. Not only to defend territory, but to secure domains. The alliance must become fluent in the language of maritime disruption and nimble in its capacity to preempt it. Closer to home, the Aegean Sea remains a theater of complexity. Greece has consistently demonstrated its commitment to dialogue, de-escalation, and legal resolution. But commitment must not be misread as concession. Sovereignty, once diluted, cannot be restored. This is what history has taught us. Our position is firm. The Aegean must remain a space of stability, not through enforced silence, but through responsible diplomacy. In conclusion, I return to a more enduring reflection. The sea reflects not only our trade, but our values, historically. Its openness is a testament to our restraint, and its safety a measure of our cooperation. We stand today at the maritime crossroads, not of navigation, but of governance. We must choose whether to preserve the sea as a space of balance or to allow it to become the frontier of fragmentation. If we choose the former, it will not be through speeches, but through strategy. Let us propose then, and it should be one of the outcomes of this meeting here at Constantina, not as observers of history, but as those who would shape its current. Let us ensure that the sea remains not a battleground of empires, but a commonwealth of peace. Thank you.